justice was a really big deal for me. And it was really hard to leave that sphere because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue that pursuit. And in my job search, I found Eisenberg and Brown, and this is an amazing civil rights firm, and we help people, discrimination matters of disability, race, sex, you name it. If you're doing something horrible to someone, we step in and help, okay? And so it was an amazing job to find, and it makes sense in my pursuit to continue helping people obtain justice. So it's been an amazing experience of getting there.
Yeah, so I mean, what brought me to this work is just really life experience, being disabled, and I think just being being forced onto the sidelines, a lot, watching other people, peers of mine, who were disabled, being, forced into the same circumstance, experiencing ableism, experiencing discrimination, watching that happen to others. It just sparked something in me very early on, and I have always known that no matter what, it's my life purpose to do something about it. So it's really just as simple as that. It just comes from wanting different for the world and for other people and for myself.
Thank y'all both for that. Next, Emma, speaking of envisioning a better world for ourselves, would you be open to giving us a 2 to 3 minute overview of the differences between the disability rights movement and the disability justice movement, and perhaps a little bit about, why the disability community now is pushing for a disability justice approach to this work?
Yeah, so the disability rights movement emerged in around the 1970s, and that focused on the legal and policy changes to ensure equal access for disabled individuals and their rights. It was heavily grounded in a civil rights framework, and focused on seeking to ensure accommodation, access to public spaces, education, and employment. The ADA came out of the disability rights movement, but disability justice that developed, I think, in the early 2000s.
2005.
Yeah, so early, okay, yeah. And this expands on the disability rights movement by incorporating a broader intersectional lens. Disability justice considers how race, gender, sexuality, and class intersects with other with ableism. It was pioneered by Patty Byrne and groups like Sims Invalid and Disability, and it emphasizes the leadership of those most impacted by oppression. So the focus of disability justice highlights the leadership of queer femmes of color, and this is crucial for several reasons. Intersectionality being the first. Disability justice is deeply rooted in, integrates the concept of intersectionality, recognizing that people experience layers of oppression. Queer femmes of color in the disability community intersects with race, gender, sexuality, and class. And having an approach like this ensures that solutions are not one-dimensional, and that it addresses the complexities of people's lives. It also challenges the historical whiteness. So in the disability rights movement, this was predominantly white-centered, and also centered around those with physical mobility related disabilities, so wheelchair users, like myself. And so by prioritizing the voices of leadership from marginalized communities within the disability community that are outside of the privileged, it brings light the specific oppressions that disabled people of color, how they are frequently different from those of their white counterparts, and ensures that solutions are not one-dimensional and that they are sustainable. So cultural shifts, also disability justice seeks not only policy change, but a cultural shift, accepting a difference in the world. It challenges worth and advocates for a world where all bodies are celebrated. And this approach is particularly transformative because it rejects the body norms that we have all been conditioned to live by. And this, I'm sorry. And this encompasses a broader and more inclusive vision of community and support systems. So overall, by fostering a community as diverse as, by fostering a movement that is as diverse as the community it represents, disability justice enriches the discourse of disability, and it also enhances the effectiveness of activism, ensuring that nobody is left behind in the pursuit of equity and liberation. I guess do you want me to do the 10 principles of?
Maybe just like a list off.
Okay. So there's 10 disability justice principles. I'll list off the first 5. Intersectionality, and applying those perspectives and analysis of multiple identities and groups to movement work. Leadership of the most impacted, anti-capitalistic politics, commitment to cross-movement organizing, and recognizing wholeness.
Thank you so much for that intro, Emma. And Raina, so Emma has brought up a lot of what our community values, like what we see as central to achieving this world that we want to see, of achieving equity, as Emma said. So how do you see employers living up to or not living up to that standard that Emma just outlined for us and that the disability justice movement prioritizes in the work that you do?
Well, we still have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure that is not a shock to everyone in this room. I mean, when we think about these laws that are supposed to support and help people discrimination, we're thinking of 1964 Civil Rights Act. We still see racism, and we still see sexism, and we still see discrimination against national origin today. When we think about the ADA, that's the 90s. We're still dealing with disability discrimination today. What I like to do is talk to employers, obviously, about helping, them deal with their policies to always strengthen and improve and work towards this time of, justice and reform. But sometimes it's difficult to get there. I mean, usually when people call me, they're not calling me to tell me how wonderful their employment experience is. They're usually calling me because an issue has occurred. And so what I do see that is positive is that I do see change being made, but like I said, there's more change to be made. I think the disability community specifically, I think we need to continue to have the conversations with employers about streamlining accommodations requests. So I think it's very difficult for persons with disabilities to request an accommodation from their employer and receive that accommodation. I think that is probably the #1 legal issue that I deal with in the disability rights community. And this is a conversation that's gone on for many years. I think we have to continue to do it because it shouldn't be all of this red tape to get an accommodation. It shouldn't be that we're having meeting after meeting, going to this person's HR room, this person's HR room, submitting this medical paperwork just to get a simple accommodation so you can work on equal ground as other persons in the workplace. To continue to post that and have those conversations is going to continue to make a difference, and the lawsuits always make a difference. If you are discriminating against persons, if you do not have the correct process for reasonable accommodation, I think that we have to obviously continue to bring lawsuits so that we can demand change. if employers will not make the change themselves. I also think that there's lots of work to be done in hiring persons with disabilities. I mean, I did some research prior to, because I wanted to see the statistics, and the statistics are that 22.5% of persons with disabilities are employed. And that is compared to persons without disabilities are being hired and employed at a rate of 68.5%. So obviously there's a huge gap here. And what can we do to close the gap? I mean, talk to our employers. Our workplaces need to look diverse just like this world looks. We need to have minorities, we need to have women, we need to have persons with disabilities. And it doesn't just stop with employing persons with disabilities, they have to have the same growth and opportunities as every person in the workplace as well. So it does not stop with just, oh goodness, we diversified ourselves, we put somebody in there. No, we have to continue to give them the same opportunity as everyone else. And that just truly comes with conversation and advocates and persons that may not have a disability advocating for that diversity in the workplace. And I think that if we continue to do that, then we'll see a change.
Yeah, I agree with all those points you just made. I think that in my experience, I found that when I enter the workplace, I've never had an issue getting my foot in the door. And I know that that's because I'm qualified, but I also recognize my privilege as well. But I think when I've been employed, my employers don't know what it means to be inclusive. I mean, I'm assuming, but I think they were sort of like, all right, we're diverse now. And then when like I will always happily educate. But when it started to become recognized what would be required to be inclusive, to be accommodating, that's when those jobs took a downward spiral. So yeah, I think there's this unknown of how to be inclusive. I think that in the culture of fear, I found that this is not just a barrier for disabled people in employment, but for everybody really. And if we look at the workplace, I mean, the across the board, this kind of standard work environment. Well, if I try and imagine what it looked like when my grandfather started working and what the workplace environment looks like now, it's not that different. You know, all right, we got some more women in there, like, and maybe some nice computers, but I don't think it's changed that much. And I think that's the key right there. That's the problem, because that we're still working under this standard that doesn't serve really anybody except a very small group of people. And so I think that alone is the disabled employment is inherently going to be barred from a lot of jobs because of that, because workplaces are inherently ableist.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us in disability justice spaces are having the conversation about this whole idea of accommodation being against the movement. The fact that we have to be accommodated at all means that we're not living up to the ideals of the disability justice movement. If we were, then this whole process of applying and requesting an accommodation wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have to prove medical paperwork to demonstrate that we have disabilities according to a medical professional, because disabilities are not the same as identities. So the whole process is very nonsensical and not in alignment with the values.
Oh, and I heard somebody, I think it was on a webinar or something, but I heard somebody say accommodations are only needed when accessibility has failed. And that really stuck with me. And I think, yeah, we wouldn't need these accommodations if the workplace was inclusive, if it was accessible. And it's not. It's so by having to request them, it's like the employer's already failed to make things accessible. So, and nothing can be perfect. And sometimes accommodations will always be needed, but with certain, because no environment's gonna be perfect, but it shouldn't be at the state that it is.
Conversations will still need to happen.
Right,
And it's about really, you have to speak to your employer, and if you are being denied an accommodation, you need to speak to an attorney immediately. I think sometimes persons question, or they talk amongst their friends and try to figure out, maybe I should let this go, or let me try to figure out how to navigate the employment space myself. I don't think that's the right answer, guys. I think that you need to contact an attorney so that they can navigate you in the correct direction. Let them take it on, because the laws are very clear. You are entitled, you need accommodation, you should be getting them. You should absolutely be getting them. There's like my panelists are saying, you shouldn't even have to ask, but if you do, you should be accommodated. If you're not, you need to contact us. And for those folks that are not disabled and you're looking around in your employment spaces and you don't see diversity, you need to speak up. You need to say that we need to diversify this workspace. Create a committee. There's tons of opportunity to always create inclusiveness in the workspace. I would ask my employer for a committee on diversity. I would, if I'm a part of the hiring committee, I'm looking around and saying, where's the diversity here? If you see a problem, we need to speak up about it. That's the only way we're gonna accomplish change.
So thinking of, the workplace that we want to be. Recently, the COVID-19 pandemic pretty drastically changed what the workplace looks like for many of us. So in y'all's experience, has that been for the better? Has it been for the worse? How has the employment landscape changed as a result of the pandemic for disabled folks?
So for me personally, seeing some accommodation requests that are requiring virtual work, I think the pandemic opened up a lot of employers' eyes to realizing that you can work from home and still get work done. I have clients that have mental illness, or they are suffering from some sort of mental disability, and working from home is a huge deal. Being able to be in a safe environment is great for their mental health. And now I'm seeing more and more employers coming around to the idea, not to deny persons accommodations. I said clearly, it happened before. We didn't even have to go through this people. But I'm glad to see that, a lot of people in my experience are being more open to at least that accommodation, and also using technology. I think that CART, ASL interpreters, we see them being denied over and over again, but now that we have this COVID-19 pandemic, and we see even on this very screen, virtual interpreters and persons that are able to help accommodate you through the screen, that has widened employers' perspective on how easy it is to get an accommodation or to provide an accommodation.
so I think, it depends on the company, it's really, with, I think it's been a little bit of a tug of war. On one hand, yeah, you're right, the working from home, I mean, certainly that's made a positive impact on my life, having more opportunities. But with that remote work, I'm seeing there was an increase in surveillance software, which is incredibly ableist. And there's an increase in, the return to work as well. So, and like I said, it really depends on the company. I think the people have a lot to do with whether or not these benefits that came about when with COVID, yeah, it's going to depend on where you're working, because there's going to be resistance within the toxic workplace cultures, and there's going to be, those surveillance software that are kind of setting somebody up to fail, or it's going to be great. I think that there are some, I've heard some friends of mine have really felt like they have a chance at a career now. But I think what's needed is, so we know what works, what has worked, what the potential, we know what's what could put that in danger. So I think that needs to be discussed more, and I think there needs to be a commitment to all right, if we're gonna do working from home and remote work, if we're going to be inclusive, then let's actually walk or not walk, walk the walk, whatever, however you move around. Because I think that there's a lot of promise and then too many situations where, I mean, at least for me, I don't know what I'm going into in a workplace. Is it gonna be actually inclusive? Or are you just saying it? I think a lot of employers are unfortunately just saying it, and it's really hard to pick out, okay, who's gonna be the one worth sticking around for?
Absolutely, and I think, speaking from personal experience, being able to attend law school virtually made attending law school possible for me. I barely made it through my first semester, and then the pandemic began and we went fully virtual, which was something many of us had been asking for as an accommodation for years, and we were told it wasn't possible. And then overnight, suddenly, when everybody else also needed it, it magically became possible at universities across the country. And so I think that goes towards this idea of disability justice as well. It's like,
Yeah.
are we actually truthfully trying to fulfill people's accommodation requests when we exist in this accommodation request framework? Are we actually doing what we can to make that possible? Or are we throwing things out immediately because it seems too expensive, it seems like too much work? Because if your classrooms are already outfitted with technology to record and have mics and video stream directly into a classroom, it's not that hard to make that available to students. So it's just like one small example of progress that was made, and then unfortunately was rolled back several years later when people began to believe the pandemic was over. So it's just, it changed the field for sure.
I think that it's important though, if you do need that accommodation, and that is going to help you in your workspace to ask for it, because there's a proven record already that it exists and it works, and it was fine. You were still able to learn and get the knowledge, you're still able to work and be productive and get work done. So there's already a track record on your side that says that this is fine, this doesn't disrupt the workplace, this is what I need to succeed. So if you do see a need for that accommodation, I would say always request it. I mean, you literally have the track record to support it.
I think with the resistance with requesting accommodation, I know because I have sometimes held back, is because there's stakes involved with the job. There's stakes involved. It's your money. It's your ability to live, to pay your bills, to put food on the table. If you're supporting other people, maybe children or other, loved ones or a friend, and I think that knowing that, I think most employees understand what consequences could follow requesting an accommodation. And although I 100% agree with you, and I think you gotta just ask anyway, but when you're in the position of you can't afford to lose that job, it makes it really hard. And I think employers too, by being reactive instead of proactive, it reinforces that fear. So if you come into a workplace and they don't automatically say, hey, if you need accommodations, we got you. Then there's already a little bit of fear of, oh my gosh, how are they going to react? There's high stakes with requesting accommodations. And then it's, how am I going to be treated afterwards? If you have to disclose a disability, depending on what it is. I mean, I have both visible and invisible. I have my visible one, muscular dystrophy, is kind of like that standard. Like nobody questions it. Nobody, it's accepted as a disability, but ADHD, dyscalculia, not so much. And so there's a lot of situations like that where people fear also, how am I going to be treated?
Absolutely.
Am I going to get that promotion?
Easier said than done, for sure. I think that is any minority group. If I'm a Black woman, me asking to be paid the same as a white man, am I going to be retaliated against for saying something? I think it is incredibly difficult to speak up for yourself. But I do think that we have to be our own best advocate, even though it is tough. It is so, so tough. And coming from it, from an attorney perspective, when I'm handling these cases, when there is a track record or an email that has you actually asking for an accommodation, or an email asking you to be paid the same as another person is being paid, that is going to be helpful if you do bring it up. Because it's much harder to talk about these conversations that may have been verbal, or if the conversation happened at all. So if you do say something, I encourage you to do so, and then I also encourage you to record it. Because you do.
In New York State, you can do it.
You can record it, not only an email, but you can record it on your phone. If you're gonna have a conversation with your employer about anything in the workplace, then you can record it. You can record it, and that could be helpful if you do end up having to bring a claim. I hope that you don't, but if you do, this will be a big deal.
Well, and just to add on, I think that's, for me, that's what gave me confidence. I just talk about the stakes and what, that fear that exists, but what helped me overcome fears of being retaliated against, or, what's gonna happen, is knowing that I have protection. If I know my rights and I do apply them the right way, there's even if they do fire, because, an employer can fire you for whatever reason, they can't do it for discriminatory reasons. So.
Correct.
But I think I felt a lot, knowing my rights, knowing knowing how to apply them really helped me in the workplace. Like I said, I still, there's been situations where I was still fired, I was still let go, but then went to a lawyer.
Yes, exactly.
So I think even if you do end up losing your job, which that could still happen, you now have a case. If documentation, if you're applying your rights, the right way, you will have a case. And I don't know, seeking legal action also gave me a lot of confidence, even though I just, been fired, and that's a blow to the ego for sure. And it certainly, made me a little self-conscious, but I felt like, okay, maybe I don't have power in that specific environment, but I do have power as an individual who stood up for herself. And,
Absolutely.
at least they're, maybe they're not gonna learn the rights, or maybe I didn't teach them anything, but they're
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think being a plaintiff it's tough. I mean, you coming forward and standing up and taking a public stance against your employer is not easy by any means. But when you go to an attorney and you have the legal back, and we're there to support you. We're there to give you a whole team saying that this was wrong, what happened to you, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you obtain the justice that you deserve. And I think that feels really good for my clients, and sounds like it felt great for you. And I think that is really, really important to know that you have a team in your corner to say that this is wrong.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important, what it taught me too is the importance of also sticking up for yourself, not just after something, but as soon as you enter a job, let them know who you are, be outspoken. I think even in that job, if it doesn't work out, it does something to you that is going to benefit you positively in the long run. The more you stick up for yourself, the more you demand to be heard. Maybe you're not going to be successful every time. Maybe a lot of times you're not successful, but I do think that ultimately you develop really important skills that are needed for the workplace, and you develop a good relationship with yourself.
And I think that speaks to the disability justice principle of wholeness, of showing up exactly as we are, as our whole selves, and knowing that we have a right to be accepted as such. Yeah. So yeah. And I would say that as a disabled attorney, it means a lot to me to be able to represent other disabled people and support them through things that I myself have had to go through as well. And to now be on the other side of it, to be able to actually do something tangible about it feels wonderful. So I think legal action can be incredibly empowering, although it does seem really scary. Especially I never meant to be a lawyer. This was an accident. And I had no idea what it meant to bring a lawsuit, what it meant to, be a plaintiff in a lawsuit. And it sounds so scary, when you talk about judges and lawyers and subpoenas and summons
Emotions.
and motions, like what do all of those words mean? And it sounds really intimidating, but that's what your attorneys are there for. That's their job, is to know what all those words mean and to support you through the process of understanding and, having access to the justice. And I use that word with caveats, the justice that is presently available that you. So, speaking on this, Raina, are you seeing, we got to touch on this, but what other trends are you seeing in disability and employment litigation? And do you have any general thoughts for clients and litigators alike?
Well, I would say, just along the same lines of being your best advocate, I would tell every person that HR is probably not your friend, and that if you are requesting any accommodation or requesting anything and HR is there, we need to make sure that we have the documentation. I tell everyone, HR, no, if you're gonna have a private meeting with HR, make sure that it's recorded. I think it's very helpful for persons that do that, and I see them on, in my office and we're litigating a case. So the persons that have taken this to heart have the backing that will make their case strong. And if you don't do it, because sometimes you don't always recognize what's going on, or I say to people all the time, sometimes in discrimination cases, we don't have all of the recordings or all the camera footage or anything, because I never anticipate someone to discriminate against me. So I'm not, what'd you say? Say it again, one more time. It doesn't happen all the time. If you can remember, I would do it, always keep emails, but if you can't, do not feel bad about it. Still contact an attorney so that we can talk you through the pros and the cons of your matter. What is really positive that I am seeing in the disability rights community and the justice community is, since the decision came down from the Supreme Court in Cummings, taking away the rights of compensatory damages in rehabilitation cases, I have seen a lot of states and local organizations rallying to change some of their state and local laws, which would provide for another avenue to obtain compensatory damages on the state level. In New York, we have that already. Our legislator provides it in the New York State Human Rights Law and the city law. We have another avenue for compensatory damages, but not every state does. And what I am hearing is a lot of advocacy groups making sure that they're advocating for those laws so that it's expanded in those states that do not have this avenue. And I really think that that is major. And any state that needs support or supports of other states, please contact me, because we all want to be able to help you in your pursuit to change those laws that make a big difference for persons that are being lawsuit.
So we're getting some really phenomenal questions in the Zoom chat, and I'm going to go ahead and dive into those. So someone asked, how can appropriate affordable attorneys be located? We've talked a lot about, yes, get a lawyer. You should totally get a lawyer. We've not really explained how you should go about getting a lawyer. So Raina, how can we do that?
Well, for us, we provide free consultations. So if you have a question, I always tell people, if you think something feels a little funny or feels a little off, you should make a call. You should make a call. It will cost you nothing. It's free. You can get some legal perspective. You can hear what one of attorneys thinks, and many other groups also have the same thing. So I would say to contact an attorney, talk to them. It's free. It costs nothing, and they can really guide you in your pursuit for justice. And it's just a call. You just go on a website. There's a number there. Give a call to that number, and we'll talk to you for as long as it takes. Sometimes my conversations are 15 minutes. Sometimes they're an hour and a half. It depends on what we're discussing. I don't charge anything. I'm here to try to guide you and help you understand the pros and cons of your matter.
And say someone, not necessarily by us, but say someone's case is accepted by a firm and they still, they still can't pay for it. They have a viable claim, but it's not something they have the upfront money for. What are some services that people offer to help folks get around that?
Well, in plaintiff's work, usually many offices operate on a contingency basis where you do not pay anything upfront, and instead we would take from proceeds, or if a court would award us money at the end of the case. So I think that's really important to know, that you don't necessarily have to have any money whatsoever to come forward and to pursue justice. You will let us front all the costs up front, and let us try to get you a resolution, and then we would split fees at the end based on whatever agreement we come up with.
Yeah, that's in both cases. I can't share too much detail, obviously, but both settlement cases, with former employers of mine, it was, I paid nothing and they took a third of the funds at the end of, of the settlement. And that really took a lot of, that was very much a relief for me. And I found that all the places that I called practice that. So, and if I go back there, what I did to my employers, I went on Yelp and Google, and I just started calling. I made a spreadsheet and I just started calling, and the ones who sounded the most passionate were the ones that I pursued and asked for a consultation. But typically my experience was I'd call an office, it's like a front office person who would answer. They'd take down some information and then they would pass it to an attorney, and the attorney would call back if they had more questions, or to do a consultation. It was pretty simple. It was that, and that was the standard, and that was every office I called did the same thing. So
I think when you're in your pursuit, obviously I want you to call us, but when you're looking, I think it's really important to look on the websites or look for groups that have, disability rights practices. We have a disability rights practice. We have an employment discrimination practice. We have a whole department that is dedicated to death discrimination. And so when you're looking at the firms, I think that you should find a firm that truly specializes in disability, so that they have a knowledge and passion of really helping you obtain, a successful lawsuit.
And I would also suggest to folks, depending on what issue you're having, your state protection and advocacy agency could be a really excellent resource. So in New York, that's Disability Rights New York. In Oregon, it's Disability Rights Oregon. You get the drift. And those can be really incredible sources of either direct support or referrals to folks.
And also state bar associations too, if you're looking for referrals, every state bar association has a referral service. So you can go, you can ask them for a list and they'll provide you a list of attorneys.
Okay, we also have a question. From a legal perspective, is there a recommended protocol for requesting accommodations in the workplace in order to reduce the need for legal aid? So I guess, is there like a quote unquote right way to ask for accommodation?
There's no right way, and the law does not require any type of way. In fact, that is something that I'm always arguing. This office is always arguing that you don't have to spell it out and say every single thing. You can make a pretty general accommodation request, and then it's up to the employer to start engaging in a process with you. So I would say sending an email and requesting whatever you need is the step that you need to take, and then you follow along with whatever your employer requires. And if it cuts off or it does not result in the accommodation that you need or getting it, then I would say contact an attorney, and you can show the attorney the string of emails that you've already sent. But you can also talk to your employer. I would just always recommend reporting everything. So that's why I like an email chain. But there is truly no legal requirement of how to request an accommodation.
And Emma, when you were going through the processes of requesting accommodations, did you have a standard approach, after going through it a few times, that you thought was most helpful?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I have ones that have worked a little bit more, but I don't necessarily agree with them. Like I find that easing an employer into my disability tends to work the best, but that in the end, I suffer because, I'm having to mask, parts of my being. So you really want to keep your job. It's an option, but I don't think it's very healthy. But what I've typically done is I will approach an employer and, again, being in a wheelchair, it's already, that's already out of the bag. So that's a privilege that I have, is not having to, surprise anybody. But I will start with addressing the barriers that I'm facing and let them know maybe what types of accommodations that I've had in the past, or give them a chance to maybe come up with the idea. Because sometimes employers really, I think an interesting thing about disability accommodations is being assertive feels, I think, I don't know, I'm assuming, but I think it came off to employers or management as sort of like disrespectful or a threat, or that some of their power was being taken from them. To have a subordinate had told them how it is, I think rubbed them the wrong way. So that can be a tough thing to navigate. But yeah, I think really just being honest, and then trying to do things in the most, like, I don't want to say diplomatic, but like, kind of, palatable way. I think probably start there. But I don't ever want to, I don't want anybody to take that as like they shouldn't be assertive or stick up for themselves or be honest. I think that's really important. It just really depends on your situation, and how much you really want to, how much you're trying to avoid a conflict. Because sometimes, actually a lot of times, in most cases, in my career, it has turned out to be a conflict. So, I've come to expect it, so I'm not really afraid of it, but I understand that can be really scary.
Yeah, I think, Emma, what I'm hearing from you, and it resonates with me, is that there's a big difference between what we want to do and what we feel like we must do in order to have access to what we need. And I mean, that speaks to the lack of representation, lack of intersectionality, the lack of equity, the lack of general compliance and adherence to basic, I would say, disability rights principles and disability justice principles. Just very frustrating.
I mean, it's the same way I feel as I've worked under a lot of men, and some of them have been wonderful, some of them not, and it sort of feels like the same, like, are we really still on this? Like, some of the comments or the obliviousness or the ignorance can be, I think, the toughest thing to navigate, because you're having to play teacher, and then also in a way that's not coming off as a teacher. Like, it's a sticky, it's a different situation. I think I just enter the situation in good faith. Give your employers the chance to do the right thing, and when they don't, then go from there. But I think give them a shot to to do the right thing, to provide an accommodation, to be inclusive. I think coming in with guns blazing, that doesn't do anybody any good. But also, come in good faith, but document. Here's the document. Keep a spreadsheet. Like, I do that, like, as soon as I start an position, I have a spreadsheet that I have at home, and even if I don't think it's even that important, I'm putting it on the spreadsheet. This is what happened today. And that's what I do every day. When I, end my work, I would fill out that spreadsheet. Did anything happen? I record it. Is there evidence? If there is, make sure I obtain a copy.
That's an attorney too.
Yeah, and literally a dream. Wow.
You should see my Google Drive.
But it's important, because also, unfortunately, when you're in a hostile environment where so many things are happening to you at once, you may forget. And keeping a detailed law, like Emma's saying, is amazing so that you yourself can remember it. 'Cause sometimes all the horrible things blend in together. You can't remember what happened which day or which year.
And it's good to record it when it's fresh, because if you have to go back, that can be re-traumatizing. And so, part of that being my solution is so that I didn't have to go back and try and remember things that were really hurtful and traumatic, and they're on the spread, I don't need to, it's there. I already have a document. So, that saved me a lot of mental anguish as well. Because I will say that is one thing, when you're when you're having an issue at work, that's very traumatic. And if you decide to take legal action, that only adds to it. And so you want to try and save your mental health as much as possible, save your, emotional well-being. And documentation, I think, plays a big role in that.
It also helps you, if you are going to take legal action, you can have the time and space to determine when you are ready to stand up. So, you can, like, for example, if something happened to you in New York State implement rights laws give you a 3-year statute of limitations. So sometimes people are not ready to immediately speak out 1 month of a discrimination situation happening. Maybe it does take a few months and you already have a law, you know what happened. So when you are ready to come forward, you have that there.
We have one quick follow-up question from Zoom, and then I'm gonna take questions from the room. So be thinking. Quickly for Raina, does a person need to tell their employer they're recording a conversation?
Not in New York. Not in New York. Unless there are for some reason you've signed something when you got there and there's some sort of contract that you're dealing with when it's, what I will also say, let me put this on the tidbit, read your onboarding paperwork. I know we don't like to do it and I know it's very annoying, but read your onboarding paperwork, because what if that is slipped in there and you've already signed away your right to record anything that happens in the workplace? That could happen. Or you might have a choice of bringing your claims in court or arbitration, and maybe you sign an arbitration agreement and now you can never bring your claims in court, or it'll be very difficult for you to get in court. All of that is probably in your onboarding paperwork that we never look at because we're all excited to have the job and we want to sign everything really quick and turn it in. We're going to stop doing that. Okay. I'm going to pick the movement. We're going to read our onboarding paperwork because those things could be in there. So if you didn't sign anything and you're in New York, you can report.
And if that paperwork can be overwhelming, what I have done, I just put it into ChatGPT, translate like I'm a 4-year-old.
I love it.
It works really well because it's, it's like a lot of writing. It's small. It's like, language that I don't feel like comprehending. And yeah, utilizing ChatGPT, honestly, it's how I lived before ChatGPT.
Do folks in the room have questions? Yeah, Greg?
So I don't know if any of you know about this. So in terms of students like recording and things like that, for anyone who's like I'm a college student, so when it comes to accommodations for academics instead of in the workplace, how does that differ in terms of fields like can they deny accommodations and things like that, and how would that work?
I'm gonna quickly repeat the question for the folks on Zoom. Is there a difference in requesting accommodations in academic situations versus like in employment setting? Is that okay? Great.
The law should protect you the same. So you should be able to email or go to your professor or whoever in the administrative department is to request accommodations. What I hear, unfortunately, is that the pushback is significant in academia, and it bothers me quite a bit. And we are seeing more and more cases being brought by students, which I think sometimes is even scarier than persons that are already working, because the students, what do they want to do? They want to get a job and be in the workforce. And so I think a lot of persons in academia are afraid to come forward. But I think what could, bolster your confidence is when you do have those emails and you do have those recordings of you going back and forth and requesting the specific accommodation. And if it's flat out denied, you need to talk to an attorney.
Anybody else?
Yes.
question. Wait, can I answer this one? Oh, yeah. If I can get it all.
Hello, hello, hello. Yes, so I represent Black deaf advocates and the community here in New York. I have two questions. My first question is DEI. So when they announce their DEI initiatives, maybe outside of the building before they go in, they say that they're DEI or just on your onboarding information they give you, but then when you go in and you feel like they're not practicing what they preach, I feel a bit confused about that. Like, did they go through their DEI training? Did the employees go through their DEI training? So I'm, as someone with disabilities or people in the community that I know, they're going out to their job and they are looking for accommodations so that they can do their work. They're confused when they get to a place when they're hired and they say that they have these initiatives. So I'm just curious if you've had that experience with your clients. And then also there's several people who also struggle to get an attorney. So like you said, they don't have money in their pockets. They don't know where to start. And then when they actually go forward with processing a case, most attorneys that they have spoken to have denied them because maybe it's like a college reputation or like they were a prestigious college that they were going against. So, and I would tell them, no, you should do it anyway. So I'm wondering, is that the case? Will attorneys sometimes turn down cases if they are against prestigious universities or companies? So those are my two questions. One with the DEI initiatives for employees, and the second one about the cases against prestigious names of universities or companies.
So as to the second question, since that's fresh on my mind, I'm sure it happens. And I know that I'm sure people in this room have experienced it. I think that's horrible and that's wrong, and to turn away from the pursuit of justice because there's a, I don't know, quote unquote, giant on the other side. I mean, where is that going to get us in our pursuit to have equality? It doesn't make sense. And any attorney that is in this work and cares about the pursuit of justice would not turn away because it is a big giant on the other side. That doesn't make sense. It goes against everything that a disability rights discrimination attorney should be doing. But you know, attorneys will deny cases for all various reasons, and you should know that if one attorney denies you, you can go to the next attorney, and you can consult with however many people that you want to.
They did it for 2 years. They were still denying them. Then they were afraid because of the statute of limitations in their particular situation.
If you are ever in a situation in which you find that you cannot find help and you still want to preserve your claims, you can, if it's an employment issue, you can file through the EEOC yourself. You can use the Department of Human Rights here in New York, and you can file yourself as well to pursue.
Do anything.
Oh, no, I get it. I don't think it's easy at all. I don't think it's easy, and there are numerous avenues that I would say to continue to pursue, and especially if you're going to preserve your claims in that way by filing with the EEOC or filing with the State Human Rights Department, you can continue your pursuit of trying to find someone. And also, I would say, look outside the state. So if it's like a prestigious university and people in the state are unfortunately not taking on the case, look outside. Look outside. We get a lot of cases from various states and various persons in the states, and they tell us the same thing. But we don't have any connection to the state. Even if we did, we wouldn't care because, again, that doesn't align with our values. But I would say pursue attorneys outside of state as well.
Oh, so you still have my mic. I'm so cool. Where to go? All right, we're on the same page. All right, you're a little bit over. I'm gonna ask one final question and then let us depart. What you got?
Yeah, so, you know, as you,
Oh, wait, hold on.
as the panel is speaking. As the panel was speaking, I was reminded of my own journey of
communication and bullying, all that other stuff. My question to you is, to Emma, is as you've kind of gone through this process, like it's traumatic. It's very traumatic, right? And there's grief and there's all this emotion. Like, how did you kind of? I've had the experience of bullying, and I've also had the experience of being at an employer that is supportive and also understands what I need to be able to perform my job to be best for the company, right? But having those two didactic experiences, how did you navigate the trauma? How did you feel?
I mean, I called my mom and dad a lot. But no, you know, I think really it was, I've always been the kind of person that's like, you know, I bite back, you know, I just, you know, if somebody tries to corner me, I'm not huddling, I'm, you know, like I said, I bite back, but I think, but dealing with, there is grief, there is trauma, it doesn't mean that I'm, you know, indestructible, I absolutely am, there's been a lot of hurt, I think, having a good support system really helped me, having an outlet, I think being involved in disability activist groups has really, you know, I just like, literally, it was only, you know, in the beginning of the year, I, you know, was dealing with workplace discrimination and, you know, but I would have like a disability event that I would go to and it was just really, that really helped. That was very healing because although I was dealing with discrimination, I was also, you know, later that day doing things to, empower myself and empower others. I think that really helped balance out, made me feel more balanced and that I had, you know, easier time carrying the weight of what I was experiencing. And I think at the end of the day, sticking up for yourself, like we were saying, you know, saying before, like, you know, stick up for yourself because even if you lose, what you're taking with you is empowerment and you're telling you're sending yourself that internal message that you matter. And that's really important. So, you know, if you, and maybe things are really bad at work and like it just sort of spirals after you did stick up for yourself, but you still have that one, you can still say to yourself, like, no, they're just mad because I called them out, you know, like, you know, yeah, and understand that you're not the only, you know, you're not alone. Maybe it may feel like that, it certainly does in the workplace. I've always felt very alone as a disabled person. I know the likelihood of me being the only disabled person in my workplace is slim to none, but I was the only wheelchair user in every job I've ever had, and it was lonely. I think, but knowing that I'm not alone, knowing that there are other people that have had experiences like this, got through it, did something about it, was really helpful. Yeah, I think it's just surround yourself with people that support you and send yourself, you know, try and make sure that you're protecting that internal dialogue. Because that at the end of the day is really what's gonna get you through it, is making sure that you have the relationship with yourself.
Thank you. Well, I am so grateful for everybody's time tonight. I hope that this gives us all a look into what the future we want to build looks like and a little bit of a better idea of what our role in making that dream a reality could be. So thank you for joining us. To our Zoom participants, thank you for your wonderful questions. To the folks who are here with us in person, we have drinks, non-alcoholic and alcoholic outside on the patio to enjoy the beautiful weather. So I hope you'll join us out there and feel free to grab some food on your way. But all of you, thank you so much for joining us and creating a little bit of stability magic tonight. Have a great evening. Cool. Thanks, guys. Oh, I forgot you were there.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
I forgot about it.
I'm sorry, you could push it one.